Iain Duncan Smith joins us now. He's former leader of the Conservative Party, a prominent Brexiteer like Priti Patel, his neighbouring MP, and he's co-author of a report from the Centre for Brexit Policy, which has launched today. And it basically says Britain is failing to reap the benefits of Brexit because its ruling elites in Westminster, Whitehall and the professions are still in the grip of a defeatist mindset that views the country as doomed to perpetual decline. It says that actually it is a post-war myth that Britain is a fading force on the world stage. Sir Iain, thanks for joining me. Why is this report important then? Because you'll have Remainers saying, no, we've diminished in stature, Boris Johnson's a joke, we're an international humiliation, and actually Brexit was a giant mistake.
Yeah, well, they're bound to say that, really, and they just haven't got over it, really. But the reality is that the UK is, I believe, a force for good. It's also a much more influential nation than people give it credit for. The paper is very important because it looks carefully at, after Brexit, what should Britain understand about itself and where should it go. At the moment, too many people in the UK are turned in on themselves, arguing about the fault of slavery previously and all other problems, colonialism, whatever, and then saying this is important now, we have to sit in judgment. But as Churchill once said, sitting in judgment on the past, you lose the future. The truth is, the UK was very influential in ending most of these things and also going forward. And there's a point in the paper that talks very much about, if you look at how the UK was, say, 300 years ago and where it lay and where it is today, if anything, it's marginally more influential than it was then. The truth is, it has huge links, cultural ties, etc., around the world. The free market was designed and invented here in the UK. English language goes abroad. Most of the countries now want to have English common law. Almost every single new market that exists wants common law. We have huge involvement and friends in all around the Far East, including India and the Indo-Pacific region. There are huge things that we should be reinvigorating, going east of Suez again after we spent our time being far too Eurocentric, just staying in Europe. It's important now that we develop our ties with America and Canada.
But isn't this a Boris Johnson problem? I mean, he gets elected on the basis of getting Brexit done, and then we don't really hear much on Brexit as soon as he is elected. You do this great report, the Tigger report on deregulation. It sits on Downing Street's desk for months. We don't even know what's happening to it. And meanwhile, the Treasury seems to be blocking a lot of post-Brexit measures that would deliver this kind of land of hope and opportunity. So the government's stalled on its flagship policy, hasn't it, Iain?
Well, the key thing is, of course, we had 2 terrible years of pandemic. That has knocked, whatever else we think, I can understand, that has clearly knocked the stuffing at times out of government wanting to do proactive and positive things over Brexit. So 2 years, very expensive and wasted. But now we have an opportunity. So it's almost as though we have to start the process from the beginning of this year properly. I did the Tigger report on regulatory change and reform. That alone would bring in just hundreds of billions of pounds of investment into the UK, even domestic investment. We already remain the largest country for US inward investment. India, by the way, intriguingly, is the second largest investor in the UK.
Yeah.
And we need now to develop India as an ally. We've got real problems, obviously, with Russia, and we've got real problems developing with China. I think China, if anything, is a more desperate threat even than Russia is, because of the scope and the dependency that we all in the West have on them and the amount of money that they have. So it's very important. This paper talks about reinvigorating our sense of who we are, not spending our time, as so many of the governing elites do. They turn around and look at us and go, ooh, we're ashamed to be British. We really don't like the idea of this. We have to apologize for everything. And my view and the view of the paper is quite interesting. It shows that that's not the view of so many people around the world, and the people that we've talked to who want to see the UK back again, act as a bridge between America and other countries and ourselves too. We have huge potential and growing allies in these other places. And after all, we talk about what you do with Brexit. Well, Boris Johnson, to be fair to him, as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, he was the first person, and we were the first country, to immediately call for sanctions, to introduce those sanctions, to then really push the European Union to do more. They did very little to begin with, and they're still doing far less than they should do, and also to realign the Americans and get them moving on this. And so it's the Americans, the British now, that are giving the most money. That's leadership.
Well, it's leadership internationally.
So that's a really good example.
People think he's been good internationally, perhaps, Iain, and not great domestically. While I've got you, she's your neighbouring MP. She was employment minister under you at the DWP. So you know Priti Patel well. Because we're doing this hour on her, just a quick word on her. Is this Rwanda policy been a bit of a disaster, not least after the grounding of this deportation flight on Tuesday?
No, I think what it does is, much in line with this paper, it illustrates something about us which is really quite interesting. It illustrates the fact that there are a group of people who will never give the scope to make the most of where we are now post-Brexit. So here we have a problem. The problem is that there are a huge number of people coming in for economic reasons. And again, I don't blame people coming for economic reasons, but asylum is not the route to take. So asylum is all about those who have been persecuted and had terrible times, where we want to give them the best support we can. And the more people that pile in trying to abuse that process, the more difficult it gets to be able to help those who need it most. I mean, it was me and my group, the Centre for Social Justice, that came up with the concept of modern-day slavery and made sure it was introduced into law by the then Home Secretary. So the policy itself is about saying to the terrible traffickers that there is no reward at the end of this if you risk and put these people into dangerous boats. And for those who are going into the boats, many who have died, you have to send a strong signal to say to them, look, there is no reward at the end of this for you, because we will process you somewhere else.
I know, but that people will then say, look, they're desperate, so they're going to do it anyway.
Well, not really, because I saw one of the people that was stopped off the flight the other day has apparently reportedly said if he had known that what would happen is he would be taken to Rwanda to be processed, he would never have tried to cross. And then we get all the criticisms from everybody saying, well, of course, you know, that the thing is they have to claim asylum. They've come from terrible problems in different countries, of course, but they are actually in France. And France, as I recall it, is a humane country which has scope and help for those who are claiming asylum. So we've just got to get this right. I don't want to see this system clogged up. I want to see proper and genuine asylum seekers come over here and get properly treated, and by the way, treated in France as well, properly. But the idea that Priti has come up with some idea that is terrible and abusive, it's not. The people that they're going to be sending there are going to be essentially those that are suspected strongly of being there for economic reasons, where they'll be processed. If they're wrong, they'll come back to the UK. Okay. That's the bit. Kill the traffickers, market in getting them across, and take the reward away so that people don't risk their children and families and others in these terrible circumstances in the Channel.
On that point, sorry, Iain, when you say if they've got a right to... I thought they stayed in Rwanda if they've got a processed asylum claim. They don't come back to the UK. That's the whole point.
Well, they won't come back if their claim doesn't work.
But if their claim does work, do they ever end up back in Britain?
Well, that's the whole point about asylum. Asylum claim, if it's correct, you have a right to be in the country, and that's exactly the point about this, really. And the thing is to get those separated out who are suspected strongly of being economic migrants, as I say, quite legitimate to try and better yourself, but it's to get those away from the asylum process, where asylum is where those who seek and need that help should get the most help we can give them. I was campaigning recently to have longer periods for those who have been found to have suffered under modern-day slavery, to have them have longer periods here in the UK. So it's about generally trying to help people rather than to demonise them, which is what seems to be the classic case for some of these lawyers.
Thank you very much. That's Iain Duncan Smith. He's former leader of the Conservative Party, a prominent Brexiteer, and he's co-author of the report from the Centre for Brexit Policy.